Where's our MC?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Janai's doing double duty today.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Welcome to our Wednesday Lunch and Learn series that we've been having for months now. We have a special edition today, so we are very, very, very thrilled. We have our regular usual suspects today. So me, Janai Lake, Tamika Stembridge, Executive Director and CEO and founder. I'm not as good as Shonda, but DeForest B. Soaries Jr., Doctor.
Where is Shonda?
She's on the back end, helping everybody on the back end today.
Oh, I see. She's going to come off camera. All right. Well, hello, everybody on the back end. Good to see you too. How y'all doing?
We are well. We are well.
Good. Listen, before we go to the conversation, I just again want to thank you for your continued efforts. I've been brought up to date, I think, on everything, and everything was good. Our holiday campaign, I just had a meeting about our holiday campaign, and that's looking good. And we're going to partner with a woman that has established a Black Friday shop with Black people campaign. So we're going to connect with her because that's a part of our strategy. And of course, we want people to give to Black organizations, including Black Us, on Black Friday. So it's coming together. But listen, today, the reason I wanted to hang out today, and the reason I'm so happy to see so many people today is because, I did an interview with the NAACP, I think just not long ago. And I was telling some of the young people that when I was coming along, everybody was connected to something. I'm talking about Black people now, that all of us were connected to and involved in something that addressed the plight of Black people. So we had Black Panthers, we had Black Muslims, we had Black students like SNCC and civil rights type. We had Black nationalists, but everybody was a Black something. And what was interesting is that even as young people, we appreciated the fact that we were all working towards the same goals, but we worked on different levels and, as it were, in different lanes, And so if you use sports as an analogy, you have a team. Not everybody's pitching the ball if it's baseball. Not everybody's shooting the ball if it's basketball. And one of my concerns today, and I guess I'm old enough to call it a frustration, is that we seem to, I'm talking about Black people now, we seem to either agree with each other or hate each other, and so the people who are for reparations believe that if you're not fighting for reparations, you're irrelevant. And then the people who are Democrats and passionate about democratic politics believe if you're not actively involved in democratic politics, then there's something wrong with you. And then, of course, Black Republicans are just blackballed completely. And it's just not healthy. Black people, we need everything. We need everything, and we need strategies. And more importantly, we need coordination between the various people who do various things. We need home ownership. We need political engagement. We need criminal justice reform. We need everything. And what I love about, well, especially the two of you, our whole team, is that we understand our role. We are not organizing protests, even though we're for social justice. We are not campaigning for any candidate, even though all of us are going to vote. We have carved out a role that says that Black people need, both individually and collectively, a financial strategy to ensure that whatever opportunities exist, we take them. Whatever scams exist, we expose and avoid them. And that's what dfree is. And no one group, the United Negro College Fund, focuses on higher education.
Right.
No one group has a silver bullet that says, if this happens, everything is all right.
Absolutely.
And so today, uh, because of my frustration just around the dynamics, I wanted to have two activist preachers on who were articulate in their ability to both describe economic freedom and its juxtaposition to social justice, and to help people understand from the outside where dfree fits into that scheme. Because unfortunately, there are people who will conclude that if we're not marching, that we're not for justice, and you just can't do everything well. And I think we do what we do well, and these two pastors are examples in my mind of how you can be passionate about addressing social justice. You can be passionate about building strong and successful churches, and understand how dfree fits into that scenario. And I was overwhelmed by a lot of what they said, and I'm sure you will be too. Have you seen this already?
Yeah, I had to sneak a peek. I had to sneak a peek. It was really, really powerful and really timely, just given all that's going on. Again, not to localize things, but I feel like I'm back in June of 2020 here in Philadelphia. They're rioting again, given the recent police murder. And so,
Right in your
again, all
neighborhood, right?
no, they're not in my neighborhood at all. I escaped the urban area. I hate to say it out loud,
Oh,
but there's spillover all over the city. They're shutting things down, they're boarding things up. And again, it's, do we have a cohesive strategy? No. Do we have comprehensive solutions? No. But I think, to your point, the way we approach things is that there's holistic solutions out there, and not everybody has to do everything, but you kind of have to pick your lane and stay in it and really stay the course in that lane to make a difference. And so I think today's conversation is right on time, as always. And I just want to encourage people to stay on, listen to the conversation. We'll be back on for Q&A after. You can also drop your comments or questions in the chat box on the side. Just a little
yeah,
housekeeping, but this is going to be good.
yeah. And Janiyah, you were with me when I came to Dallas to Friendship West Baptist Church, where Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes is the eminent pastor. Great church. We could take our church and put it in their lobby.
Inside his church. Yeah, I heard. I've never been there, but I heard it's huge.
You talk about mega churches. And Janiyah has also been to Bates Memorial Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. She went there for a site visit, and that pastor, Bruce Williams, Reverend Dr. Bruce Williams, has a marvelous ministry. He preaches 7 services a week. He has service on Wednesday noon, Wednesday night, Saturday noon, Saturday night, and 3 services on Sunday. I just don't know how he does it. Great church, great fellow. He actually came with me to Ghana on one of our trips to Ghana. And I just hope pastors who are on will be inspired to understand how these very successful pastors, long before dfree, were able to use these resources to strengthen their church, and how socially active pastors, Louisville is where Breonna Taylor was killed, and Breonna Taylor has gotten the attention of all kinds of people, including pastors like Bruce Williams. And of course, you're in Dallas, Janiyah, and Freddie Haynes will talk about his church literally being attacked by a caravan of white nationalist, right-wing, Confederate flag waving truck drivers on a Sunday.
Wow.
That was crazy. It was crazy. Now, this is only half of the interview. I don't know what to do with the other half, but we talked so long, it was too long to include in your Wednesday webinar. So we pulled out the section that relates to the work that you do and the information you give out. And so I'll figure out maybe during Black History Month, because we talked a lot about history and social justice and activism. And the other part, maybe we'll use it for Black History Month. All right. So thank you, ladies, for letting me join you today.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a great conversation. Stick around, guys. We're going to go ahead and come off camera and get started.
Both of you have endorsed and embraced the D3 ministry, the D3 message, and the D3 strategy. And both of you were present when I came to your churches to present D3. You know, a lot of big churches will have you come and talk to their people about something like this, and then the pastor be someplace else. And just as it has been important for pastors to be present on the social scene and for pastors to be present in a priestly function, if we're going to empower our people economically, it's really going to be led by pastors in our churches. Um, Both Bruce, you and Fred have talked about D3 starting with the hermeneutic. We, as preachers, we talk about hermeneutic. Basically, hermeneutic means how you translate and use scripture. And all of what we've been talking so far really is a consequence of our hermeneutic. We see the Bible in a particular way that causes our behavior to conform with our biblical interpretation. Talk to me, Fred, and then Bruce, about your perception of the hermeneutic. You know, we trained 4,000 churches. We work with non-churches. We've got partnerships. But I don't think we've ever talked about D3 on the level that the two of you see D3 as pastors and as theologians. So just take a little time and share with our followers and our viewers your perspective.
Doc, you know, I called you one day so hyped because I'm getting ready to preach the prodigal son based on how you preach the prodigal son. And but I'm trying to, not make it a Buster Soaries sermon. I got to Haynes it, and it just hit me what you did that Saturday for my leadership. Jesus. And so let me just say this to any big time preacher pastor who invites you in. Let me tell you right now, if you invite Doc in and you don't hear the message yourself, you will be the poorer throughout eternity. And again, you opened up the prodigal son. We all know it. And I'm saying, what is he going to do with the prodigal son? I done invited him in to talk to my leadership about, debt and all that stuff. And he's going to do the prodigal son. And then there it is. Boom. Hermeneutically, the prodigal son was in debt. He wasted everything he had. And when you walked through that very familiar passage and gave, for me as a preacher, because I'm a preacher, I'm always hunting for, homiletical jewels and treasures. And I'm listening to you unpack that stuff. First of all, I'm being blessed by the message because you're challenging me to take a good look at my own finances, how I'm handling my finances, and how I'm wasting my substance, as it were. And so you're challenging me personally, but then professionally, I'm watching you unpack that thing and I'm saying, you know, uh, you're not quite Jesus, but you're getting there, because I'm saying, never a man spake like this about the prodigal son. And on one level, I ain't gonna lie, there was some homiletical jealousy, because it's like, why haven't I seen this all these years where I could not preach it? But here's what got me, and I'm being very serious about this. The hermeneutical integrity, where you were not pimping people, in the name of making yourself rich, but you were unpacking a text with such integrity that for me, and here's what I loved about you, because I already knew it, people didn't know it, at least they didn't know it like I know it, and that is, I knew about your social justice receipts. I knew, you reminded us afresh of your work with Rainbow Push. And I'll put it like this. What you did that day and what dfree has done for me is, with all gratitude for Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push, Operation Breadbasket, which was about economic justice and empowerment. You brought it where all of us can get it and can see that, okay, I got to fight these structures, but if I'm broke, fighting the structures, then what's up? And let's be real. With all due respect and love for all of our civil rights activists, most of our civil rights organizations are broke. They're not just broke, but they beg Pharaoh to fund the movement. They can't ask us to fund the movement because we're in debt. We're the prodigal son in the far country. And that's the hermeneutic I got that day. I said, this brother has brilliantly taken what's familiar to show us how we can, no, first of all, to show us that we in the far country. Not only are we in the far country, we're broke in the far country. And are we going to, recall who we are and deliver ourselves from this bondage? Because one of the things that you say, and it's as Bible as they come, if you are in debt, you are in bondage. If you are in debt, you're a slave. You're a slave. And so there is a 21st century version of slavery going on in our community right now. And we, in the name of justice, have done everything but address the chains, the slavery that our people are experiencing. And so, I'll just say this, and I say this with love and respect and appreciation for all the work that is being done, but it hit me that day in a way that was powerful, persuasive, and that is, I have a church that is known for our justice work. We're fighting for justice, chained to indebtedness. And we got to have our own Emancipation Proclamation and set these folk free so we can really do the work of fighting for justice. So again, the hermeneutic is tight, it's integritous, it is rooted in the best of the biblical tradition. And, really, and I close with this, Martin Luther King Jr., in that movie, Selma, makes this statement. And I think you picked up on what Dr. King said. He's lamenting to Ralph. Ralph, we done integrated these lunch counters, but we can't afford to buy a hamburger, and we can't afford to even read or we don't have the education to read the menu. Now, if that ain't a Buster Soaries ministry in summation, you're trying to educate us so we can read the menu, but then make sure we have the money, not just to buy a burger, but what I love about you, you want us to own the restaurant and produce our own.
Right. And I respect your work. Some years ago, I contacted you because you were one of the only Black preachers in the country who understood what the payday loan industry was doing to our people. And that speaks to not only personal responsibility, it speaks to public policy.
Right.
And economic freedom has to take into account the personal and the policy. Otherwise, we'll end up trying to make folk rich within demonic structures.
Right.
Or we'll try to transform the structure and miss the people that need the structure to be fair the most.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so again, here's what got me, and this is why I just felt that God was ordering all of this, man, just ordering this. We had done this fight, and we're continuing. I mean, the fight continues because they don't give up because they're making so much money off of us. And I never will forget, we're leading this fight, we're changing policies, and then my people came for me, and my people said, okay, you done this, but what alternative do we have? And that's when it hit me. We got to get these folk out of these positions and predicaments of indebtedness, change some minds, get the shackles off of their minds, because they actually felt that I was an enemy because I was going against the payday loan industry that was trapping them in this indebtedness. And so, one thing we did was open up our own credit union. And within that, we have small dollar loans. But for me, and here's what's so powerful again, it's dfree. You want a small dollar loan, you got to go through dfree, because we're not going to have you in this vicious cycle where we become your new pimp, because I'm not trying to pimp our people.
Bruce, you, of course, you preach more sermons per week than most of us do in a month. But at Base Memorial, you institutionalized dfree some years ago, and you've had, I think it's a part of your Christian education program, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ongoing classes through the years. Talk about why you would do that. I mean, the church was doing fine before dfree.
It's doing finer now. Yeah, there were two paradigms. Well, not two, it's probably more, but there are a couple of paradigms we could have used. One, you just take the whole church through it one year, and but the thing is, we have a growing church. And so what about the people who will be coming after you finish that? So what we did was we made it a permanent part of our curriculum, and we're always recruiting people for classes, graduating them and recruiting them more. And so our goal is to get every single member through it and every new member through it as well, and give them the opportunity to do that. So we made it an ongoing part, so they can understand that it's not something that you just kind of do on the side or it's a good idea. No, it's part of what it means to be a good steward, which is part of what it means to be a Christian. So we put it under the heading of stewardship to help them understand that it's one thing to get blessed, but it's also your responsibility to manage your blessings. And the Bible has a lot to say about money management. In fact, one of the things that the church has done a disservice to is that we talk ill about money as if the Bible speaks ill against money. It never speaks ill against money. It never says the money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money, which means it's not the money, it's our attitude towards the money. It's not having possessions, it's allowing the possessions not to possess you. So it's a good slave, but a poor master, money. So we help people understand that it's a tool that can be a liberator for yourself and liberation for others. One of the things that's really Freddie talks about credibility. He talks about your credibility. One of the things that helps sell this for me is your credibility. And I mean that by this, not only your social justice work, as he mentioned, and people who know you know that, but you have not only been instrumental in speaking truth to power, but you've also been involved in the system in such a way that holds it accountable. Not only have you been outside of the system, talking to the system about the system, but you've been a part of the system. And I think when I met you, long ago, it wasn't long before you were the Secretary of State of New Jersey. And so you're involved in the system, holding the system accountable as well, and being a model for those people who are in the system to know how to be in the system and not be pimped by or compromised by the system. And then on top of that, you've been so doing that, being in the system, and then being a part of this program, dfree. And let me say to every pastor who might be listening to this, I just want to echo what Freddie said. If they ought to invite you, first of all. When they do, people read what's important by our presence. And if you're not going to be present, I mean, they should invite you regardless. But when they invite you, they should be present, because their presence endorses what you're doing. It's not just something they're doing is a good idea. It's something central to what it means to be empowered. We want people to tithe, but they can't tithe 10% off of zero if they're in debt. And so you got to help. And people say, we felt bad because we're asking you to contribute, but we're not teaching you how to deal with what you have so that you can have something to contribute, not only to the church, but to lead to the next generation. And so this, your testimony at the beginning of the book and other things that helps tie you into the person, into the principles and the like, it's a powerful way of helping them understand how important it is, and to help them understand that we live in a system that is designed to help you become a consumer and not a producer. And so I think that's important as well. It's a very simple program that has a very sophisticated underpinnings. So that's what I like about it. There's nothing superficial about it at all. That's why we chose yours churchwide rather than other programs that are out there, some of which are cost prohibitive just to get in it. You got to buy all this stuff you got to go in debt to try to get out of debt, which is foolishness. And so yours was true to its own principles about getting out of debt by not putting people in more debt just to get out of debt. So we have been, it has been exceedingly important. It also helps us put this personal management of income in the context of things like reparations. Because if, and I'm a big proponent of reparations, not only, you know, cut the check, but also change the system so that people won't continue to be in debt. But it's not, you know, just to say they cut the check tomorrow and they gave everybody $120,000. I mean, if you don't know what to do with money, you're going to be right back where you started. So this again is about, even though we do have this widening and yawning wealth gap, you are at least teaching people what to do in the meantime with the finances that you have, and that you can't fall for the okey doke that says now you need, you know, you watching TV, you've satisfied, you got all your needs met, then all of a sudden you see something on TV that tells you you now have this need. Now you need a new car. You didn't even know you needed a new car. The TV just told you. So you get ready to go spend money you don't have to impress people you don't even know. So that program is a major piece. And I predicted a long time ago that it has the potential to revolutionize, because we have this very bifurcated or trifurcated way of looking at liberation for people, when in fact, there has to be a number of things we are doing simultaneously. And so as Freddie brought out, what good is it to be able to sit at the lunch counter if you don't have the money to buy the hamburger or can't, you know, own your own business? And so churches need to manage their income well. We need to teach our members to manage their income well. And then we need to find ways to help cooperate with one another so that we can do well with the finances. That program, I mean, again, I don't know who's going to be watching this, but my word to you all is whatever. I mean, it's my own life. I don't even believe in debt. I mean, you know, that thing can really change your life. And if you abide by its principles, it reprioritizes the things in your life that matter the most. And you get to ask yourself, do I really need another coat? Do I really need another? I mean, something as simple. I mean, I've had people go through the program and in 1 year, they are out of debt completely in 1 year. And the people who are apprehensive about it at first, didn't want to talk in groups about their finances, can't thank us enough because of the freedom of being able to live without that debt hanging over your head, and to have the potential to leave something to succeeding generations, to leave a house or two or three, to leave in, you know, monies behind, and to be able to send their kids to college without getting in college debt, and a whole host of other things, of course, that I can mention. I can't endorse it enough. It is that I think my church probably want to give me a raise just for having a program in there, because they're so appreciative. I'm serious. They really, the people who are in it, you know, sometimes you don't know how bad you need something till you finally get it. The people who got in, who've gone through the program, are our best in evangelists for the program.
Yeah, you know,
Doc, can I please say this?
please, Fred, please,
Please, let me say this right quick, because Bruce just really sent me going in several directions. I'll keep it real narrow and quick. Number one, any pastor listening, I called up Buster Soaries. I said, listen, Doc, first I'm thanking him for his hermeneutic. But then I said, in this crisis, how do I approach offerings? And what blew my mind, and it does to this day, is that you took the time to basically pastor a pastor and give me the kinds of directives that, you know, I ain't gonna lie, I applied that Sunday. And when I tell you the rewards have been amazing, and I'm not talking about prosperity, I'm talking about something as simple as me saying thank you. Thank you for what you've been doing. And then having people say, you know, wow, that really meant a lot to me. You gonna thank me like that? I got to give some more. And I'm like, huh? And so, I mean, that, so personally, I want to say to every pastor, this is a pastor of pastors. Secondly, what's so important to me is, Doc, I was reading, you know, during our September stewardship month, I said, well, let me read these devotionals. And now, Doc, they're a regular habit now for me, because what you're doing psychologically, which is amazing, is you're changing the mindset. Because as long as you have a debt mentality, then your lifestyle will be a liability. But when your mind changes, because every day you're being fed with this liberating material rooted in scripture, and then you have the nerve to start in Genesis. And so I'm just waiting you to get to Revelation, because it's like this Negro is walking from Genesis to Exodus. I mean, just walking right through it. And so if you want a systematic Bible study that sets you free, it's spiritual, and yet it's helping you to handle your finances. It don't get no better. And so this is my last piece, and I promise you I'm done. We made the mistake several years ago, and I regret it. It's been about 10, 15 years now. But there's a white man who makes a lot of money off of us. I won't call his name, but his initials are DR. And when I tell you that was, I mean, first of all, you're talking about someone who supports policies that oppress us and keep us in debt
You
while
preaching, brother.
making money off of us in the process.
You preaching,
And,
Doc.
huh?
I say you preaching. Keep it going. I say you preaching.
Don't push me, Doc, because it's easy to do right now. Okay, but again, he's pimping us, making money off of us, and supporting policies
Right.
that keep us in debt.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, when I tell you, I'm like, I'm anti him, I'm anti his program, and it bothers me that he even has people that look like us now as a part of his recruiting effort. And again, it cost too much money.
Right.
And as Bruce brilliantly said, we basically go in debt to help us get out of debt.
Yeah.
And again, what they send us, it does not, and this is the point I'm making, it does not put in us long-term liberating habits,
Right.
so that we can, in our spirituality, connect it. For me, Doc, I mean, as good as the books were, I'm gonna tell you, those devotionals are enough. Again, I just can't believe you have the nerve to start in Genesis. And like, this man is walking me through scripture and setting me free at the same time. It's bananas. So I'm sorry for going so long, but Doc,
No,
thing
perfect,
is
perfect.
brilliant.
The third volume of the devotionals will be out in January.
So tell me where you starting.
I'm in Kings now. Yeah, I'm in Kings. I'm in Kings now. But listen, in the workbook, in the dfree workbook, I tell the story about preaching at Shaw University in the T.H. Boyd Chapel. And T.H. Boyd was the pastor of Salem Baptist Church. And one day after chapel, I discovered he was still alive. And I couldn't figure out how he could have the chapel at Shaw named after him while he was yet alive. Well, the answer was he gave the school $500,000 to build the chapel. And I couldn't figure out how a black Baptist preacher was making that kind of money in Brooklyn. And he taught me how he saved that much money to give his alma mater $500,000. And I embraced his strategy. And a lot of what's in D3 came from Thomas H. Boyd, the pastor of Salem Baptist Church in Brooklyn. Um, we're almost done.
One more thing, I'm sorry, but I got to do this. Here's what you did that was so convicting when you spoke for us. Doc, you talked about your ties. You're a tie man. And I'm sitting up there listening to you, thinking about what is my tie that I have to have, because I got a bad habit of spending money on this tie. And Doc, when I tell you, I discovered what my tie was. And that was basically, I'm, I'll admit it. I hate to say it, but I'm gonna go there. Doc, if you show me Tom Ford, I mean, Jay-Z, I don't pop mollies, I rock Tom Ford. Doc, Tom Ford had become my Buster Soaries tie. And I literally, Doc, since that day, Tom Ford ain't seen me. They are sending me all kind of messages, but I was so convicted because I was making Tom Ford rich,
Right.
wearing his stuff, advertising his stuff. And to make matters worse, I'm making him rich, and I ain't even got no stock in Tom Ford.
Right.
So
Right.
what kind of slave was I? And again, this is last year. I'm not talking about something that this year. This is last year.
Right.
And Doc, I have not seen Tom Ford since then. And I'm looking at the money I've saved, the money
Boy.
I've saved,
Boy.
not getting a Tom Ford suit at the rate I was doing it.
Yes, sir.
Doc, and guess what I did? I said, okay, I didn't get a Tom Ford suit. I'm putting it in my credit union savings account.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes.
uh, listen,
That's the
I'm
strategy.
about to shout right now. So,
That's the word. But listen, uh, look at all the Zoom meetings we've been on this year. And if we had bought stock in Zoom back in March, it would be up 400%. It's the renewing of our minds. But listen, we could go on all afternoon. My final question, we're pushing hard for people to vote. I did a video with the New Jersey Secretary of State teaching people all of the options for voting in New Jersey because we need a big turnout this year. However, after the election is over, there are some things we're going to have to do no matter who wins. And so just give me one or two examples of things that we're going to have to do with your credit union uh, around economic empowerment. We'll be fighting for social justice. But as Bruce said, we've got to be able to do more than two things at the same time. And my focus will stay on this economic empowerment. What are two or three things that we're just going to have to keep doing no matter who's in charge?
okay, so I'll just go ahead and jump in and say, I received an email. This is Monday, Friday, and in Texas, the payday loan industry, they have morphed their approach to payday loans. And so now we're doing a deep dive study into what they are doing because, again, it is an industry that does a great job. It's legalized loan sharking. And so for me, economically, in light of the the leeway that Texas gives the payday loan industry, because what we ended up doing was getting with local cities and municipalities, and we were able to pressure those municipalities in Austin, San Antonio, Houston, El Paso, and here in Dallas. Fort Worth, we're still working. And that is, we basically set up zoning laws that restricted where payday loans could set up shop. And because Texas has been so free with them, you have people in our state legislature who own payday loan stores. So we're up against Goliath. And so I had people this week spending time because 2021 in Texas, our state legislatures only convene every other year. So they didn't convene in 2020, they're convening in 2021. So our main fight that we're looking at for 2021 is how to, again, restrict these payday loan operations, where I live in a state where we have more payday loan and car title loan stores than we do McDonald's, Burger King, and Jack in the Box combined. That's how bad this thing is. And so the fight in that regard is going to remain strong. And it's something that we got to deal with because, again, come for our communities. I got to say this because I got to give you victories, testimonies. We've been able to shut down in Dallas at least 20 payday loan stores since we began the fight. And that may not sound like a lot, but when I tell you they are backed up by the governor, they are backed up by, again, lawmakers. But because of what we put in place by way of zoning restrictions, that's been a good thing. So now we got to look at what this next fight looks like.
Great. Well, I'll be staying in touch with you on that. Any way we can help, you know, we're happy to help, because that is Goliath. That
Yeah.
is the payday loan is the crack cocaine of the financial services industry. Yes, sir.
Well said.
Right.
Yeah.
Well
Bruce?
said.
Well, two or three things. One, I am a firm believer in changing the mindset of people about money. So I think your program does that like no other program does, especially in Christian context, but for anybody who just wants to be good. So I think number one, that should be a priority. It's a priority at our church. We're going to continue to do dfree because it changes the way people think about money. And so I think we're going to keep on doing that, keep preaching around that whenever we get a chance, whether it's a sermon about it or a sermon where you can insert something about it, that we ought to do that because we have people's minds. I think it'd be even more effective now because people are listening to us from across the world that are added to the people who are already listening to us online because everybody's going online. And so that gives us an opportunity. So that's number one. Number two, I think Freddie named it, not only payday loans, but the overarching principle is that you've got to be conscious of challenging policies and legislation that empower people about finances. And so I think it's important that after the election is over, that we hold political office holders accountable to those issues that relate directly or indirectly to people's financial welfare and well-being. Payday loans they have them in Louisville, it's not as large as in Texas. But the other thing that happens, I happen to pastor in the poorest zip code in Jefferson County. And of course, since there's a high misery index, there's always liquor stores and the like that try to take advantage of people's. I mean, you have liquor stores for the same reason you have crack houses. And that's because people know that when you're suffering, you have a tendency to consume in an effort to get some temporary relief from the pain you're going through. So it's a way of exploiting people's pain. So we've been really big on making sure that those type of industries and those type of businesses cannot exploit our community. So our church is really involved in making sure that we are at the various places necessary to make sure that when they start trying to multiply the amount of businesses like that in our community, that we fight really hard, and it had some real good victories to do that as well. So I believe affecting people's mindset about money. I believe the policy changes and holding people accountable, because you've heard the expression, I know as a person who's been involved in this fight for a long time, that all politics is local. So I think after we decide on the president and et cetera, but that we should be everybody all the way down to the dog catcher. We should be making sure that we educate ourselves and keep people involved and engaged. One of the things I've learned to do finally is that usually if you have a church that's engaged in the community and a pastor that is, usually the old paradigm is that the pastor be involved in everything, that you be at everything. Early in my ministry, I decided on a different paradigm, and that is, rather than being a pastor that's at 100 different things, raise a community of faith where you have 100 people who are involved in 100 things, so that you can confer with them and talk to them about what's going on, and then tell the congregation, so that if we ever need to mobilize, we can mobilize. And when we need to educate, we can educate. So I think it's important for all three of those things to happen. And that is that we change people's mentality, that we fight against those issues and institutions that undermine us financially, and that we stay educated about it in a more effective paradigm, so that we can stay abreast of what's going on, so that we can make sure our people are empowered, so that they can manage finances, start businesses, and feel empowered to make a difference in the community for Black, until we get reparations and all these other things that are necessary in terms of reinvestment and the things that have to happen in communities that have been disinvested in, as an example, and have now experiencing the cumulative effects of being disenfranchised for 401 years.
Fred,
Now, can I just say this right quick?
yeah.
And that is, and I'm sharing this with you because we're going to need you and your leadership based on your experience. What I was going to say at first, and I've just kind of thought about the fact this is everywhere, and that is, up until this weekend when I got hit with the payday loan piece, our whole thrust in the next Texas legislative session was going to be on addressing the fact that in Texas, less than 2% of all procurement opportunities go to Black communities or Black businesses. And that's an economic justice issue. Less than 2%. We make up, 15 to 20% of the state population, but less than 2%. And that is an economic justice issue. And the more I thought about it, as we were getting ready for up until last week, up until, the whole payday loan piece, I doubt very seriously if there are other states in the country that are saying we're doing more than 2% when it comes to doing business with Black businesses. And we're talking about right now this racial reckoning. Racial reckoning has to go deeper than just, and again, we got to deal with the criminal justice system,
Right.
but a lot of our criminality has to do with the fact that we lack so much.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be very important that we take a look at these state contracts, these state budgets, and look at these state budgets and say, okay, how much are you doing on our side of town with our businesses? Because I think that's a justice issue economically.
Well, yeah. First of all, you're exactly right. New Jersey's no better. That's number one. Number two, all of these corporations that are expressing support for Black Lives Mattering, once we get past all of the fanfare and the ceremonies and the events, the question is, how much are they doing business in Black America?
Right.
We may have to cut this part out, but I'll tell you this. When we came out of the 60s, the plight of Black people who had been subjugated and denied turned into programs like affirmative action.
Right.
Well, affirmative action benefited white women more than it benefited.
You all up in my head.
So then we went from affirmative action to diversity and inclusion.
Right.
And diversity efforts benefit others more than Black people.
Right.
Which is why the call for reparations is important.
Right.
Because we need specificity.
Right.
Every program that has leveraged the plight of Black people has been a bait and switch. And so the program proceeds, and Black people are still stuck at the bottom.
Right.
So I am challenging state governments, chambers of commerces, not to focus on fairness, inclusion, diversity, but Black people.
Right.
You think Bruce was excited?
Very much so. So much so that we get to bring him on to help do Q&A with you.
I was so excited. We did this, we pre-recorded this because both Bruce and Freddie, are working on on a second doctorate degree. So both of them are working on a PhD. They already have doctorates. They're working on the second one. And both of them pastor lost churches. And so I figured we'd pre-record it and not try to get them live. And then we look up and here's Mr. Wright live. Dr. Williams, how are you? You're muted. You got to get him unmuted. Yeah, I was so excited. How could you possibly have time on a Wednesday to hang out with us?
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You had service today, right?
Yeah, but we're in revival every Wednesday, and so I had a couple of ministers send in videos. We made the videos, and they're
I got it.
the 12 o'clock is on, and the 7 o'clock will be on. So I didn't have to. It's a wonderful thing.
The beauty of COVID pastoring. The
Yeah.
beauty
Plus,
of
I'm on vacation, so that's one of the reasons why I'm trying
That's
to
right.
actually be on vacation to the degree I can.
Well, I appreciate you joining us.
Sure.
I appreciate you and Fred expressing the views that you did. And what I want to say to the audience, I got an email from Africa while this was showing, asking me, who are these preachers? And what I want to say is that Dr. Williams and Dr. Haynes are mega church pastors. And the problem is the word mega church, which should only describe the size of a church, has morphed into meaning something that is sometimes ridiculous, irrelevant, and obscene. But these are mega church pastors whose priority is to serve their people and empower their communities. And I wanted people to see that also, that you are not the guys trying to get your people to buy you jet airplanes. Although I imagine if they did, you would at least take one flight. So what kind of questions, ladies, do we have for Dr. Williams and for you and whoever?
There's been lots of great comments, a lot of powerful comments. Just thanking you all for the conversation. We have one question on how to get started with dfree. And we can just let you know to send an email to info@mydfree.org. The training engagement team, that's what we do. So we will help you with your strategy. We will help you with your tools. We will help you with everything that you need to get started. The only cost of the program is the cost of the books, which a book set is less than $30. So just send an email to info@mydfree.org. Our team will get connected with you and help you all get started. So that was one question. But there is another question in here, says, how impactful is dfree if you are a small church and not a mega church?
Yeah, Dr. Williams, what's your view on that?
Well, the impact doesn't have anything to do with the size of your church. It depends on the level of participation. I mean, if you can have a mega church, if nobody participates, there is no impact. You have a small church and everybody participates, it's a major impact. So whether it's a large church or small church, the key is to convince the membership of the value of the program to the membership, to the individuals, to each of them. What helped me was to just offer it as a kind of way of showing how much the church cares about its members, because it's a gift, if you will, a gift of information that empowers people. And it's one thing for us, as I mentioned in the thing we just did, that it's one thing for us to teach them to tithe, that is, teach them what tithing is. But it's another thing to teach us how to manage the other 90%, or actually to manage it all, so that they will know how to be able to give the 10%. So if it's a small church or large church, it's irrelevant. The impact is going to be to the degree you can get the people to participate. And I promise you, you won't need but a few. In fact, it may spread faster in a smaller church. Anyone who takes the program is going to be your best evangelist for the program.
Yeah, we offer dfree to small churches as a church growth strategy. There's no better way to grow a church than to have a relevant ministry that focuses on people's needs and does more than shout and sing.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll find that people will come to church if they know the church is helping them financially, and you'll find that people will fall in love with Christ when they discover that we learned what we know from Jesus.
Mm.
It was Jesus who told the story of the prodigal son. We're the ones who moralize it and make it irrelevant for financial purposes. And so what we talked about was the way we understand the prodigal son as having wasted his money. You know, when I talk about the prodigal son, the dictionary taught me what prodigal meant. I thought prodigal meant immoral. But the dictionary said prodigal means wasteful extravagance. And so when I waste money on things I don't need, I'm prodigal, even if I don't drink liquor and chase women.
Right.
So,
Right.
so in many ways, it's better for small churches, as Bruce said, than big churches, because often small churches struggle with strategies to grow that they can afford.
I see an interesting question here. Thank you both for that. This one is really interesting. How do you feel that churches with predominantly white congregations are doing to contribute to their Black parishioners' Black education? Or if you have insight on how Black parishioners in largely white churches can take advantage of programs like dfree? That's an interesting setup, given where we are today, but I get it.
Is that for me or is that for, I didn't.
Either one. It's about, you know, Black people that are in predominantly white churches. I'll also say, and this is an interesting story from Pastor Quick in California, one of his lead dfree participants was actually a white woman in a Black church. So if I could answer that, it's that dfree is available to everybody from wherever you are, and to just start it, consider offering it. One of the other questions we have is, do you have to be a pastor to be a part of dfree? And no, that's not the case. We've had one member, I always think about Sabrina in Atlanta, who is a member of a large church that got permission from her pastor to start dfree as a small ministry in a larger church. And it's now one of our largest dfree programs, even though the pastor himself didn't necessarily start the program.
Yeah,
So
you know, Bruce, that she goes to E. Dewey's church.
Okay.
By the time E. Dewey found out, she had 200 or 300 people signed up for dfree. So,
Wow.
so E. Dewey said, "Well, come, let's make this thing official."
Right. Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
sooner or later, pastors need to endorse it. I mean, it's going to get its greatest. I mean, 200 or 300 people are a lot of people, but in Dewey's church, that's probably 5%. You know, so in order for it to really get the kind of traction it needs, to the degree it could, I think it's gonna be beneficial to have pastors really speak of it and encourage people to go into it, because especially in Black churches, because you know, a pastor is given such influence that if the pastor notices it, it grows. If the pastor ignores it, it dies. So I think pastors should, because it's an excellent program, really give it the attention that it deserves. But yeah, dfree is, by the way, it is I agree with sister, it is, anybody, it doesn't matter whether you're Black or white, anybody, it's good, sound principles. It's, um, I think Black folk will really find it helpful for a number of reasons, but of course, if it's sound biblically and sound financially, it's good for anybody. Truth anywhere.
I'll tell you, see, the book itself, the book Say Yes to No Debt, was intentionally edited to be generic for Black, white, doesn't matter. The workbook does lean towards African American culture for very specific reasons. One, we have a unique history. Two, we have unique circumstances. Three, our culture has its own distinctions, like all cultures. And so, while the workbook is good for everybody, the principles are universal. You know, talk to a financial professional. That's not ethnic or cultural.
Right.
Spend less than you earn. There's no ethnicity there. But how we communicate the narrative. For instance, I talk about Harriet Tubman and her willingness to go back into slavery to bring people out. That's an African American narrative. It's an inspiring story, but it resonates with us because she is us. I talked about T.H. Boyd at Shaw University. Black people know that Shaw University was a Black college formed right after slavery. It means something different to us. And one of the issues I have with integration, multiculturalism, and people of color type discussions is that the Black narrative often gets lost if we don't just come straight out and say Black. And if it's good for Black people, it's good for everybody. But what's good for everybody is not always good for Black people. And we needed something that's biblically sound, that's culturally relevant, and that's affordable. Like you said, Bruce, you don't want to go take out a loan to buy the material to teach you how to get out of debt.
Right. Yeah, and I also think it's important too that there's no such thing as a culturally objective approach to anything. The other programs, aside from being inaccessible, I think because of one reason and because of the cost to get in them, is that all of them are done from a cultural perspective. It's just that if the dominant culture is the perspective, it's given as if it is not a perspective. It is. Everybody does it from a perspective. And the benefit of dfree is not only does it do it from the perspective that you're talking about and educates people about finances and exposes them to culture of Black folk, but for anybody. And that cultural piece is important for everyone. So I think you can get a double education if you're white or other ethnicity. If you are not only getting the financial principles, but the cultural principles. You get a good history question. You talk about Harriet Tubman and Shaw and others. They don't know who they are. They can find out who they are.
That's right.
Excellent. Just to let our viewers know, we're a little bit over our time. You will receive a copy of the recording of this session in your follow-up email. We've tried to answer most of the questions. Anything that's not answered here, we'll make sure that we follow up in the email. But I wanted to thank Dr. Soaries and Dr. Williams for joining us today live. The conversation is really intriguing and it's so necessary and so timely. And like we mentioned at the start, there's actually a whole other part of this conversation that you'll likely hear at some point in the future. And so I wanted to just thank everyone for participating. Remember that you can learn more about dfree at www.mydfree.org. And you can also always email us at info@mydfree.org. Dr. Soaries, you want to have a closing thought?
Yeah, one closing thing. You know, the day after Thanksgiving has been called Black Friday for years. And what Black Friday has meant is that people, including Black people, stay up all night for the right to go into a store to buy things they don't need, can't afford, and put it on their credit card for high interest. We are claiming Black Friday to be in the Black Friday, and we're urging Black people to get out of debt, to resolve their foreclosure issues, and we're going to help you. So on November 21st, which is a Saturday, all day, we're having a big debt-a-thon. We've got professional counselors that you can contact that day who will contact your creditors and restructure all of your debt to take away the stress and the pressure. We've got foreclosure counselors. If you are in foreclosure because of COVID-19, we have licensed foreclosure counselors that will be on hand all day that day. We have, we're going to sign you up for courses. We've got a credit builder program. If your credit score is like 400 or 500, we have a special program. We're going to sign people up that day. So put November 21st on your calendar. It's in the Black Friday, and then I'm dreaming of a Black Christmas.
All right.
Excellent. I just dropped that in the chat. You can join our mailing list to make sure you get the invitation. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. This has been our In the Black webinar series special edition on faith and finance. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Sure,
Thank you, Doc.
Sure.